each day, and your class is the one I usually record because you're online. So today we're talking about Chapter 6, Ancient China, and we're going to strictly focus on the geography of China today. If you are the note-taking type, make sure you set up your notes now, get that ready. This is only going to take a little bit of our class time today. And again, you can always access the Nearpod on Schoology in the content folder. So, physical geography of China. China, or what we know as modern-day China, covers nearly 4 million square miles. It is on the continent of Asia. Some people, I have noticed, get it very mixed up where they confuse Asia with China as though they are the same thing. China is on Asia. It is a country in Asia, but Asia is a continent, so please keep that in mind. As far as geography goes, because of the geography of China, people in China have been isolated and separated both from the rest of the world and from each other. The Gobi Desert's very harsh. It's in the north of China. East of the Gobi Desert, which is where most of our early society in China is going to be discussed, are low-lying plains. This is very good farmland. In fact, it forms one of the world's largest farming regions in the world today. So this North China plain here, this very green land that you see, is fertile land where there's a lot of farming. And of course, the Pacific Ocean forms the country's eastern boundary. So I'm going to give you guys a minute to catch up and jot down any notes you need from that. Keep in mind that you should not be taking notes word for word. You can also access this Nearpod on your own later from the content folder on Schoology. All right. So moving on to the west, there are a lot of mountains and mountain ranges. It's a very rugged western frontier in China. There's also the Plateau of Tibet that has mountains that reach more than 26,000 feet. There's also the Himalayan mountains to the south of the Tibetan Plateau. And of course, the tallest mountains in the world are located in the Himalayan mountains, particularly Mount Everest. There are several smaller mountain ranges that spread eastward, particularly through here. I could be saying this incorrectly. I believe it's the Qinling Mountains. I could be very off. My Chinese pronunciation is not the best. But this mountain range here has separated northern China from southern China for a pretty long portion of their history, particularly in the early development of the civilizations there. Move on now. So, as far as weather patterns in China go, climate varies very much because it's such a large landmass that obviously it can range significantly in terms of climate. In the northeast, as you can see on the map, it gets very cold and it is dry. Winter temperatures can drop below 0 degrees, and the rivers in that region are frozen for more than half of the year. The deserts in the northwest are also very dry, as you would expect. The eastern plains are particularly rainy. And then, of course, further to the south in the more tropical regions, it can be very wet, very, very humid, very hot. That region would experience monsoons, much like in India. And so just a lot of range of the sort of climates that we're talking about in this area. Okay, so ancient Chinese civilization, much like the other river valley civilizations we've talked about, developed along rivers. Particularly, there are two main rivers that we'll be talking about this chapter in China. There are more rivers than that, but these are the two main ones. The Yellow River, the Yangtze, stretches about 3,000 miles across northern China. It's quite long. It floods quite often. And when it floods, it deposits yellow silt on the ground once the floodwaters recede. And so it's called the Yellow River for that. It's also referred to as China's sorrow, particularly because it has such a tragic history. The flooding has taken many, many lives over the centuries. And so the people of China owe this particular river their existence, the development of their civilization, and yet it has also been a great source of sorrow and suffering and loss for them as well. And so it's called China's sorrow, in addition to the Yangtze or the Yellow River. You need to be familiar with that. I'm going to move on now. To the south is the that's a confusing way of phrasing that. I apologize. The Changyang River or the Yangtze River is to the south. Both of these rivers flow from west to east, by the way, emptying into the Pacific Ocean. Obviously, the Yangtze actually originates in the mountains of Tibet, and it is the longest river in Asia. Now, in early China, the two rivers do help link people from the east to the west. However, they are still divided from north to south by mountains. So keep that in mind. Good. All right. So, like other river valley civilizations, if you look at this map very carefully, you can see the development of the river valley civilizations of the ancient world. Obviously, ancient Egypt on the Nile, the Mesopotamians along the Tigris and Euphrates rivers, the Indus Valley civilization along the Indus River, and then we have along the Yangtze and the Yangtze rivers, the development of early Chinese civilization. So for the same reasons as those other civilizations we've talked about, the Chinese developed along rivers because flooding makes the land fertile. The access to the water makes all of the things that we have talked about, farming, trade, all of those things are made easier because of the river. People were growing rice in the Changyang Valley as early as 7000 BC. And in case you didn't know, rice is actually much more nutritious than grain. It provides a lot more calories. And so they can actually support a larger population in the region of China than they can elsewhere where grain would be the crop that is most often grown. Over time, separate cultures do develop in the southern and northeastern China. And over time, of course, these Chinese cultures, they develop, they become more advanced. We found evidence that, like early Egyptians, early Chinese filled their tombs with objects, some holding more items than others, suggesting that the early Chinese civilizations had developed a social order by that time. And that's actually where we're going to stop with our discussion on Chinese geography today, because I have a small assignment that I would like you all to complete. Please go into the Week 6 assignment folder. It's out of order. And you will find an assignment called Chinese Geography Scavenger Hunt. It's not a very long assignment. However, what you're going to do is find the link at the bottom that says Interactive Map of China. And I want you to experiment and play with this a bit and interact with it and read about different regions in China. There's you can click on like the Yangtze River and then you can read about the Yangtze River. You can click on the Yellow River and read about it. And the Kunlun Mountains, all of this is here. So that's what you're going to be doing, and then you're going to answer the 12 fill-in-the-blank questions. If you want to copy and paste the questions and fill in the blanks in that way, you can. If you just want to number them and write your answers in separated by a comma, that's fine too. You will have to hunt for the answers a little bit. They are all included in the scavenger hunt. So you should be able to find them relatively quickly, but you are going to have to look a little bit for them, okay? So I'm going to stop the recording.